How do you analyze the strength of your business? And how do you stress test how well your business model, your enterprise mix, and what you're doing on farm as your core operating system, how do you determine how well it's performing? Welcome to the Profitable Farmer Podcast, where we share stories and tips to help you run a better farming business and create your very own freedom farm. If you're looking to work smarter and not harder in your farm business, welcome. You're in the right place. G'day ladies and gents, I hope this finds you incredibly well, coming out of winter and enjoying the start to a really positive spring. Hey, as part of our members' 3-year Platinum Mastermind journey, one of the things we do as a team is we get on farm. So we've got a Land Cruiser and caravan that heads around Australia, and we're on farm seeing 60, 80 or 100 members in any normal year. And, shout out to Tim and Cheryl and our other coaches that go on farm. And over the last few weeks, I've been lucky enough to spend a few days on farm doing farm visits to our members. And there's a common theme. When we go on farm, it is fantastic to have a drive around and get a sense of the place. It certainly helps how we turn up and support. But then we dive in to a really deep review of our members' current reality. And then for the second half of the day, normally we're focusing on strengthening their strategic plan and helping them deal with and overcome any of the main challenges or obstacles or roadblocks that are in their way, or analysing and supporting opportunities and growth decisions. And consistently, we get fantastic feedback about these farm visits and how they help families come together and be aligned and strengthen their business models and their strategic plans. And so in the last few that I've done, one of the key exercises to come from it is this construct of reverse engineering the strength of our business model. And so in this episode, I just wanted to hang out with you for a little while, ask you to grab a pen and paper if you can, and I want to take you through an exercise to help you analyze the latent potential in your farm business. So many of us have got to a point in our businesses where our farms are breaking even, or they might be making a modest profit, but they're not performing at their optimum. And so being on farm and working through these numbers has been really valuable for our members. And I wanted to extend that same thought process to you. So as I say, grab a pen and paper. And this is just me sharing with you how you can use the numbers that we focus on in our business model analysis and benchmarking processes to analyze the strength of your business model on the back of an envelope. But it can be quite insightful. Before I do, though, I want to ask you this key question. How do you analyze the strength of your business? And how do you stress test how well your business model, your enterprise mix, and what you're doing on farm as your core operating system, how do you determine how well it's performing? So many farming families that start with us don't do that. They don't analyze the strength of their business model. They're doing what they've always done, or what they've inherited often, or what, agronomists locally might say is best practice. But we need to make sure that that's best for you. And so let's get into this and reverse engineer and analyze the performance of our farm business models. So one of the key metrics that we look at first is return on assets managed. Now that's net profit, which is all the income less the operating costs and the overheads. So the profit relative to the land asset that you own. So let's just use broad numbers initially. Let's say I'm running a $20 million farm asset. And now 80% of that might be owned and 20% might be leased. But the broad land assets that I have access to, owned, leased, and other, let's say that's $20 million. So the first number I want you to write down is 5% return on assets managed, profit on assets. So if we look at that, and I'm just getting my calculator out, I should know this, 5% of 20 million is $1 million. Now that is the net profit that a business or a land asset base of that value should be achieving. Now, worth noting that net profit is after an owner's wage. So it needs to account for a realistic commercial wage for you and other family members. Whether you're actually paying it or not, we need to add that in. So for the first person in the family, we impute $115,000 of wages to the first family member, and then every other family member thereafter, we impute $75,000. And net profit is before interest. So it's the income, less the operating costs, less the overheads, less all wages, gives us our net profit. Now, land values have jumped in the last 5 years. So I do encourage you when you first do this to be conservative in the land value estimation, because there's no doubt that it's been harder to achieve the 5% return on assets managed number now than it was perhaps 5 years ago. But here's the point, team. The top 20% in industry are achieving between 4 and 6% net profit divided by assets managed. Now, the next number that's key, and this is probably one of the most important ones, and I'll get you to write this down, is 30% of income should be our profit target. So we can impute that back. So if we take our $1 million profit, team, and we divide that by 0.3, it tells me that my gross farm income should be $3.33 million. So in order to achieve that $1 million profit on my $20 million of assets managed, I need to be in pursuit of $3.33 million of revenue. And what that tells me, if we keep working this through, is that 35 cents in the dollar can go to operating costs and 35% in the dollar can go to overheads. So we're starting to design our business model that we should be generating or should be able to drive performance from for the assets that we've got available. So on a $20 million asset, we should be able to achieve $1 million profit. And to do that, we need $3.3 million revenue. Now, when we've done these numbers with a few of our members, normally and often, the revenue that they're achieving is well under that. So if you've just done this for your business, I'm willing to wager that many of you will be indicating that, well, there's no way we can achieve that revenue on the land we have, and there's no way we could achieve that net profit on the land that we've got access to. And I want to pause for a minute and challenge you there. And certainly for our members, one of them was this: They were doing a 2.5 mil baseline revenue when they set down a budget in normal prices and with normal yields. They were doing 2.5 to 2.6 mil revenue. So this exercise challenged them that they needed to think critically about the intensity with which they're running their operation in order to move from 2.6 to $3.33 million revenue for the $20 million worth of land that they had access to. Now, the family that I'm talking about were deeply concerned about the debt that they were carrying, and they were feeling real cash flow pressure, and they thought that that was a function of the debt that they were carrying. And so when we looked at it, they had a $20 million land asset and they had $3.5 million worth of debt, which actually gave them $16.5 million of equity. So their balance sheet was actually quite strong. So the next number that I think is really helpful to know, and we'll look at this two ways, is our level of gearing. And so if 12% of our income could be allocated towards paying interest, and we're generating a $3.33 million income, then $400,000 could reasonably be allocated to interest. Now, if we look at that, $400,000 of interest divided by a 7.5% interest rate means that actually their level of debt is quite okay. That their balance sheet's strong, and in fact, they probably could justify taking on more debt in order to achieve an uplift in that revenue. The next number that we looked at was the labour base that they would need to achieve that. And the top 20% in industry, we know, are allocating in the order of 15% of their income to wages, family and employed. So if we look at that for this business, doing a 3.33 mil revenue, they can justify a wage base of $500,000 income. Most businesses that we start with are under-resourced and they're not paying themselves a commercial wage, and they're not setting up their team structure and org chart to be able to deliver that uplift in income that's required. And so let me just go back through this. We take the assets that we've got access to, we multiply that by 5%, that tells us what our profit target should be. And if you can look at your current budgeted profit relative to that, it shows you how far away your current business model is from its optimum. If you divide the profit figure by 30%, that will give us the revenue target that we should be achieving. And like this family, 2.5 was far away from the 3.3 that they should have been able to achieve. Then if we look at the interest rate that we can pay on that income, it tells us that perhaps the level of debt we're carrying is okay, and perhaps, in fact, we could justify taking on more debt in order to pursue that uplift in income and that uplift in profit. And then 15% of our targeted revenue can be allocated to wages. Now, there's two other constructs here that I wanted to touch on. The first one is interest cover is a number that banks look at really closely. And ideally, we want to be north of 2 and ideally aiming at 3 times interest cover as a key metric. Now, what that means is we want our profit to be able to cover interest 2 or 3 times. And so if we look at our profit of $1 million, and we divide that by 2, it says that we can have an interest cover in the order of $500,000 in order to achieve a 2 times interest cover, and $1 million divided by 3 is $333,000 of interest. So the construct of this business carrying $3 to $4 million worth of debt is completely fine from an interest cover perspective and from a finance relative to interest perspective. So when we look at this team, so many family farms are performing well under their optimum. And I speak to Liam Lenigan, who is the founder and managing director at Go Farm Australia. They're in the business of raising capital to aggregate underperforming family-owned farm assets and look for ways to create efficiency and to optimize the land that they acquire. I deeply believe that farming families are the best and most efficient custodians of farmland in Australia and New Zealand, but we need to challenge ourselves deeply around the revenue and the profit that we should be achieving from the assets that we've got access to. And so there are some other metrics that we might get into shortly. But before I do, I just want to share a couple of really important principles. If you think about 3 rings in a triangle interrelated, there's 3 constructs that we've got to get in balance. 3 plates spinning and linking. The first one is our business model. And so our business model needs to be able, when we set down a forecast with average prices, average yields for our commodities, our business model should be able to achieve that 30% profit on income. And if it can't do it with average prices and average yields, then we've got to go back and stress test and challenge our business model in order to achieve that. Now, it might be stocking rate. It might be rotation. It might be, and I'll come back to this, the fact that we're running 3 or 4 enterprises on the land that we have and that they're competing against each other and we're not driving the efficiencies that we might. There can be a number of reasons why our business models aren't achieving 30% profit in an average year with average prices. But we do need to keep stress testing our business models until we find a business model that can achieve that. Now, what that means is that we might make a loss 1 or 2 years in 10 in a decile 1 or a decile 2 environment. We might make windfall gains in a decile 9 or a decile 10 environment, but in a decile 5 environment, we can still make a strong profit. And we want our business models to be able to make break even or better 8 seasons in 10. We know we're not going to get it every year. And certainly the higher our cost base, the more likely we are to make losses 2 or 3 years in 10. So then it comes back to making sure that our cost structures are appropriate, that we can minimize the losses but still be able to maximize the profits in bad and then good years, respectively. So that's the first plate. The second plate that we've got to get spinning in balance is gearing. The third plate is scale. So we've got to have our business model strong. We've got to have enough scale, and we've got to make sure we've got an appropriate level of gearing. We can have a great business model doing that 30% profit, but we can have too much debt, and it can be our debt that constrains us. If we're paying north of 12% interest on income, or our interest cover is south of 2 times profit, then we may well be carrying too much debt. Or it could be that we've got a great business model and we've got an appropriate level of debt, but we're just not applying that across enough scale. And so share farming and leasing more country so that we can apply that business model across more country becomes the best strategy. But so many businesses we see, their business model isn't firing across the area that they have access to, and their debt levels are what they are, but relative to their current profit, it can be constraining the cash strength of their business. Now, importantly, and a key construct that links with that is scale isn't area. Our definition of scale is revenue. I can have 1,000 hectares and do a $10 million income, and I can have 10,000 hectares and do a $1 million income. So the best measure of scale is revenue. And so we've got to make sure that we're hitting that key metric of appropriate revenue for the area that we've got access to, and the scale that we need to make sure that our business model is delivering for us the level of profit that we want. So the next principle that I want to touch on is how to achieve and drive scale. And there's 3 ways that we can do that. It's not what most people think. Most people think that in order to increase scale, I've got to share farm, lease, and buy more country. And that can be the most expensive way to achieve scale. Remember, scale is driving revenue. So if we look at scaling up through that lens, and our next deep dive with our members is very much on this topic, the first way to drive scale is through simplification. Lots of businesses that start with us, they're running 3 or 4 or 5 enterprises. Now, on the area that we've got access to, if we're running 2, 3, 4, 5 enterprises, so often those enterprises are competing for area, they're competing for resources, and they're competing for your investment in equipment. So that it might be that only 40 or 50% of our farm is cropped, but we've got a full cropping plant, which means our cropping plant and equipment isn't being utilized to its optimum. Or we've got flash shearing and livestock facilities, but we're only applying those to 50 or 60% of our farm because we've got cattle, sheep, cropping as the example. The top 20% in industry are focusing on achieving scale in 1, maybe 2 enterprises. And profitability increases across our data set for those businesses that are running less enterprises at scale. So one of the best things we can do is do a benchmark or a business model analysis, allocate costs across each of our enterprises comprehensively so that we can look at the profitability of each of the enterprises we're running and then make a very objective decision on which one is the one that we're best at. Often of the 3 or 4 enterprises we're running, one of them is an underperformer. But when we can apply 1 profitable enterprise or 2 profitable enterprises maybe across all of our area, that can be one of the best ways to drive an uplift in scale. What it also means is that all of our plant and equipment is being utilized to its optimum. One of our biggest costs in a cropping enterprise is our plant, our fuel, and our labor. And if we can be utilizing those to their optimum by focusing that infrastructure across more area, that can be the thing that can get us done for us. Equally, making the decision to reduce cropped area, let go of cropping plant, and going all in on livestock, sheep or cattle, can be great strategy because our cost base can reduce significantly as a result, delivering us more profit as an outcome. So what our benchmarks tell us is that there isn't one enterprise that necessarily outperforms the other. If you are in the top 20% as a cropper versus a wool grower versus a meat sheep or a cattle producer or a dairy farm, you can achieve the metrics that I've talked about. So it's not about trying to pick the winner. It's just doing one of them well, efficiently and profitably and at scale. So the second way that we can scale up is through intensification. And that, in a livestock example, is driving stocking rate, driving weaning rate, and making sure that we're balancing fodder with the numbers that we have. So containment lots, on-farm feedlots, significant fodder conservation programs, and those things can be the thing that unlock our intensification of a livestock system. And we're seeing that significantly across our members and across the community. Now that land values have lifted, we're starting to really focus on how we can intensify and achieve that uplift in revenue on the farm that we have. And normally, and in most cases, optimizing scale and optimizing the performance of the farm that we have is a way more cost-effective and a way more astute return on investment than buying more country. And what is really important is that we optimize the land that we have so that when we do take on more country, we're applying a profitable business model across more area rather than the alternative. And then the third way that we can scale is through expansion. But encourage you to look at doing that after you've optimized the area, the business model you have on the area that you have. And the target is to pursue that 30% profitability relative to income and to pursue that 5% return on assets managed. So we've covered a lot, and I hope that you've been able to scratch down some calculations for you. I encourage you to go back and listen to this again, but I think there's real power in not just waiting for a benchmark report or a business model analysis to come to you from your advisors. You can use those numbers, those key performance indicators, to stress test the business model you have and to understand what your income and profit targets are that you should be targeting in optimizing the farm you have and the area that you've got access to. I hope you found that helpful. There's one more metric that I'll mention just briefly, and for the croppers out there and the mixed farmers, we call it TPLMC. So it's total plant labour, maintenance and contracting relative to income. And we believe that your investment in plant and labour should be, when summed together, including contracting, 25% of income. So it's a really important number to make sure that you've got the balance of your investment in labour and contractors and your investment in owned plant accurate and in balance relative to income. So when I went on farm and reverse engineered these numbers, what it uncovers often is that the income that we budget for now is well under the income that we should be targeting. And the profitability that we're achieving now is well under the profitability that we should be targeting. But knowing that, I think, is key. And what it does, as it has for the members that I've spoken to, it challenges us all to ask different and better questions. If for the family that I mentioned, They needed to be in pursuit of $3.3 million of gross farm income and $1 million profit instead of the $2.5 million income and the $500,000 profit that they have been achieving. The challenge then comes, well, how do we need to change our enterprise mix? How do we need to re-engineer our capital base? How do we need to review our investment in plant and equipment? And how do we need to revisit our balance of labour in order to pursue the target of 3.3 income and $1 million profit? Now, it's different in every situation. So please know I'm not giving advice here. I just want to share the principles, and there's three just to remind you of. The first one is use the key performance indicators to stress test the strength of your business model and to reverse engineer what your farm asset should be capable of. Then with that principle squared away, I encourage you to set that down as, for example, a 3-year target, and then convene your family and advisors and set down the challenge of uncovering a way that you can achieve that uplift in revenue and profit before you perhaps look at expanding. The second principle is that we need to get our business model, our scale, and our level of gearing in balance. And those KPIs are there to make sure that we understand how to do that constructively. And then the third one is to appreciate that scale is revenue, and the three ways that we can achieve an uplift in our scale is firstly through simplification, secondly through intensification, and then thirdly through expansion. We developed a short course called the Cash Flow Optimizer, and it is incredibly valuable. It's quick and quite straightforward to work through, and it allows you to apply these numbers accurately to your budget or to your most recent year and stress test the strength of your business model in more detail than we've covered in this session. Sam Johnson, our CEO, put it together. It's an excellent short course. We're offering that to our farming community at $97. And we're doing that because we want every farming family in Australia to be able to do what I've just spoken about with real confidence, so that you know how your business is performing and what your targets should be in terms of uncovering your farm business's potential. So it's $97. I'm going to share the details in the show notes. And the other thing I wanted to say is our team of coaches and analysts are so passionate about helping farming families unlock that latent income, that latent profit in your business. And so I would love for you to book in for a complimentary coaching call with our coaching team. It's available to all of you. And let's start looking at these numbers and these key principles for business improvement rigorously and thoughtfully. And let's look at how we need to focus with you and your family and your farm team to be in pursuit of a higher income and profit, often on the farm that we run now. As a final concept and a final comment, your farm's performance shouldn't be measured by your cash flow, by your bank balance. We're all going to be in the midst of good seasons, tough seasons, good prices, poor prices, high and low interest rates, and input costs that duck and weave and flex. What's important is that the ratios that we've talked about, we set them down as targets that we know where we are now, and that the trends around those ratios over time, for all of the vagaries that our industry and our farms are exposed to, that those ratios are trending in the right direction towards the targets that I've described today. Now, that might be a 2-year journey or it might be a 5-year journey, but it's available to all of us. And so I hope, if nothing else today, I've shown you the importance of knowing your high-level numbers, and that you have an appreciation for just how simple it can be to stress test your business model and then go to work to challenge it with more intent. We haven't talked about DSE per hectare. We haven't talked about tons per hectare. They're important numbers, but I think they come after the global figures, and that we need to look at our businesses holistically first and then drill down from there. Certainly cost of production and having an appropriate cost base for the enterprises we run is key to delivering profit. But those numbers come after we understand the balance of the bigger numbers and the more holistic business numbers that I've spoken about today. Hey, I hope that's been helpful. I hope it's given you the ability to make a start in stress testing the strength of your farm business model. As I say, if the cash flow optimizer short course is of interest to you, I encourage you to grab that for $97 and work through it with your family. And thank you, Sam, for putting that together. And again, I encourage you to click the link in the show notes and book in for a complimentary coaching call where our team can help you look at these numbers, look at your business, look at a whole lot of constructs that might be holding you back, and give you some direction on how to move through those so that your business can pursue the top 10, top 20% of performance that's available to all of us. Hey, thanks for listening, and please go to work to stress test the strength of your business model and understand intently how your business is performing relative to what its potential can be. Thanks, everyone. Take care, and bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Profitable Farmer podcast by Farm Owners Academy. If you're new to this show, be sure to follow us. If you've been a long-time listener, let your friends know about us, or come continue the conversation in the Profitable Farmer Facebook group. All the best as you grow your business and create your freedom farm. Until next time, keep being incredible.